What if Cersei was executed instead of Ned Stark? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The godswood of the Red Keep is quiet as the morning light filters through ancient branches. Ned Stark walks beneath the heart tree, his footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. In his hand, he carries a leather satchel filled with documents that will change the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Today is the day he confronts Queen Cersei Lannister with the truth about her children. But this time, Ned Stark is not walking into this confrontation unprepared. 2 days earlier, Littlefinger had approached him with a different proposition. The Master of Coin sits across from Ned in his solar, his fingers steepled as he speaks. "Lord Stark, you are an honorable man. But honor without preparation is simply martyrdom. If you wish to see Cersei Lannister fall, you must ensure she cannot take you with her." Ned stares at the smaller man. "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we gather real evidence. Not just Jon Arryn's suspicions, but proof that even the High Septon cannot ignore." Littlefinger leans forward. "Give me 2 days, and I will provide you with sworn statements from servants who have witnessed the Queen's indiscretions. Testimonies from guards who have seen Ser Jaime leaving her chambers at irregular hours. Written correspondence between the twins that speaks of their affections." "And why would you help me destroy the Lannisters?" Ned asks. Littlefinger's smile is sharp as a blade. "Because chaos is a ladder, my lord, and sometimes the old ladder must be torn down before a new one can be built." Now, standing beneath the heart tree, Ned has everything he needs. The leather satchel contains signed testimonies from 3 servants, a guard's sworn statement about seeing Jaime enter Cersei's chambers after midnight on multiple occasions, and most damning of all, a letter in Cersei's own hand to her brother that speaks of their special bond and references our beautiful children. Meanwhile, across the Red Keep, Captain Janos Slynt of the City Watch receives an unexpected visit from Littlefinger. Gold dragons change hands, but not in the way history remembers. This time, the gold comes with specific instructions to secure the Tower of the Hand and be ready to arrest the Queen on charges of high treason. Cersei arrives in the godswood as she always does, regal and confident. She wears a gown of deep red silk, her golden hair catching the morning light, or she expects to find Ned Stark alone and vulnerable, ready to be manipulated or threatened into submission. "Your Grace," Ned says, rising from his seat beneath the tree. "Lord Stark, you wish to speak with me privately." Her voice carries the tone of someone who believes she holds all the cards. "I did." Ned opens the satchel and withdraws the first document. "I wanted to show you what I've discovered about your children." Cersei's smile falters slightly, but she maintains her composure. "I don't know what you think you've learned, but I know that Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are not Robert's children," Ned states plainly. "I know they were fathered by your twin brother, Jaime, and I know that you have committed adultery and treason against the crown." "You cannot prove such wild accusations," Cersei says, but her voice lacks its usual confidence. Ned holds up the letter. "This is in your own hand. A letter to your brother, where you speak of our beautiful golden children, and reference how Robert will never see the truth of what we have created together." Cersei's face goes pale. That letter was meant to be destroyed years ago. "There are also sworn testimonies from servants," Ned continues. "Guards who have witnessed Ser Jaime's nocturnal visits to your chambers. A wet nurse who remembers you speaking of how your children would rule as lions, not as stags." "Those are lies," Cersei hisses, but her hand trembles as she reaches for the letter. Ned steps back. "I have also consulted the lineages, as Jon Arryn did before his death. Every time a Baratheon has wed outside their house, their black hair has dominated. Robert has fathered many bastards, and all of them bear his dark hair and strong features, Your children bear none of his traits. The Queen's mask finally slips. You have no right to threaten my children. I'm not threatening them. I'm revealing the truth. Ned signals toward the edge of the godswood. 6 men in stark livery emerge from behind the trees, along with 4 members of the City Watch, led by a captain whose loyalty has been purchased with northern gold rather than Lannister promises. Behind them walks Sir Barristan Selmy of the King's Guard, his face grim but resolute. "Sir Barristan," Cersei says sharply, "you swore an oath to protect the royal family." "I swore to protect the rightful royal family, Your Grace," the old knight replies. "If Lord Stark speaks truly, then my oath has been to a lie." Ned looks directly at Cersei. "I offered you a chance to flee with your children. You refused. I offered you the opportunity to confess and seek the mercy of the 7. You chose pride instead." He nods to the captain of the City Watch. "Queen Cersei Lannister, you are under arrest for high treason, adultery, and deceiving the crown about the parentage of the royal heirs." "You cannot do this," Cersei shouts as the gold cloaks move to surround her. "I am the Queen Regent. My father will have your head for this." "Your father is at Casterly Rock," Ned says calmly. "King Robert is hunting in the Kingswood, and you are no longer in any position to give commands." As the guards place shackles on the Queen's wrists, Cersei looks at Ned with pure hatred. "You think this ends here? You think this makes you safe? You have no idea what forces you've set in motion." Ned's expression remains stone. "Perhaps not, but I know what forces I've stopped." Meanwhile, in his tower office, Grand Maester Pycelle receives word of the Queen's arrest. His hands shake as he reaches for his writing materials. He must send ravens immediately. But to whom? The Lannisters who have protected him for years, or the new power that has just demonstrated its capability to bring down a queen? The weight of the moment settles on everyone present. Cersei Lannister, who ruled the 7 kingdoms from behind Robert's throne for years, now stands in chains beneath the heart tree. Her golden hair is dishevelled, her red silk gown marked with dirt from her struggle against the guards. "History will remember this day," she says, her voice low and dangerous. "Yes," Ned agrees, "it will remember the day the truth finally came to light." As Cersei is led away to the dungeons of the Red Keep, Ned remains in the Godswood. He knows that everything has changed. The War of 5 Kings is about to begin, but this time the battle lines are drawn differently. This time, Ned Stark holds the cards. The ravens that fly from King's Landing that day carry news that will shake the realm to its foundation. The Queen has fallen, and with her, the careful balance of power that has held the 7 kingdoms together since Robert's rebellion. In the days to come, armies will march, and kingdoms will burn. But in this moment, beneath the ancient heart tree, justice has been served. The ravens reach the Kingswood before the sun sets. Robert Baratheon sits by the fire in his hunting pavilion, a cup of wine in his massive hand as his hunting party rests for the evening. The day's hunt has been successful, but the king's mood is about to change forever. Ser Balon Swan approaches the royal tent carrying a message scroll sealed with the dire wolf of House Stark. "Your Grace, an urgent message from King's Landing." Robert breaks the seal and reads the contents. His face transforms from casual interest to confusion, then to something far more dangerous. The parchment crumples in his grip as his massive frame begins to shake with rage. "That faithless whore!" he roars, rising to his feet so quickly that his chair topples backward. "That lying, scheming, faithless whore!" The entire hunting party freezes. They have seen Robert angry before, but this is different. This is the fury of a man who has discovered the deepest betrayal imaginable. "Your Grace?" Sir Balon asks cautiously. Robert waves the crumpled message. "Cersei, my own wife, cuckolded me with her own brother." His voice grows louder with each word. "Those children I've called my own, fed at my table, planned to leave my throne to... They're not mine. They're bastards born of incest. Lancel Lannister, the king's young squire, goes pale as death. Your Grace, surely there must be some mistake. Mistake! Robert's laugh is bitter and terrible. Ned Stark has evidence, witnesses, a letter in her own hand confessing to the deed. He hurls his wine cup against the tent pole, sending red wine splashing across the silk walls. 16 years. At 16 years I've been raising another man's bastards while she laughed behind my back. The king begins pacing like a caged beast. His hunting party exchanges nervous glances. None of them have ever seen their king in such a state, and they're not sure what to do. "Bring me my horse," Robert commands. "We ride for King's Landing at first light." "Your Grace," Sir Balon says carefully, "perhaps we should—" "I said bring me my horse," Robert bellows. "I want to see the look in that whore's eyes when I tell her what I'm going to do to her. I want to watch her die." But the king's rage burns too hot for sleep. Within the hour, despite the protests of his guards, Robert mounts his destrier and rides deeper into the woods. He needs to kill something, needs to feel blood on his hands to match the fury in his heart. Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, Ned Stark stands in the Tower of the Hand, reading reports from the City Watch. Cersei Lannister sits in the dungeons below the Red Keep, and her children are under guard in their chambers. The entire castle feels like a powder keg waiting to explode. "Lord Stark," Maester Luwin says as he enters the Solar. "I've received word from Grand Maester Pycelle. He requests an immediate meeting regarding the, current situation." Ned sets down the parchment. "Send him up." Grand Maester Pycelle arrives within minutes, his usual confident demeanor replaced by nervous uncertainty. His hands shake slightly as he bows to Ned. "Lord Stark, this is all very irregular," Pycelle begins. "The Queen's arrest, drop the charges. Surely there must be some way to resolve this without such drastic measures." "The evidence is clear," Ned states firmly. "She has committed treason and adultery. The children she claimed were Robert's heirs are bastards born of incest." Pycelle wrings his hands. "But the realm, my lord, the stability. If word of this spreads, word will spread regardless," Ned interrupts. "The question is whether it spreads as truth or as rumor. I intend to ensure it spreads as truth." The old master's face goes ashen. He has served the Lannisters loyally for years, but he also knows which way the wind is blowing. "What of the children? Young Joffrey, Tommen, Myrcella? They are innocent in this." "They will be cared for," Ned assures him. "But they cannot remain in the line of succession. Stannis Baratheon is Robert's rightful heir." Meanwhile, in the Kingswood, Robert's hunting party struggles to keep up with their furious king. The boar they're tracking is massive, easily 400 pounds of muscle and rage. Under normal circumstances, Robert would approach such a hunt with caution and strategy. But these are not normal circumstances. "Your Grace, the beast is too large," Sir Balon warns as they corner the boar near a stream. "We should call for more spears." Robert dismounts, his war hammer in his hands. "I don't need more spears. I need to kill something." The boar charges. In his fury, Robert doesn't dodge fast enough. The massive creature's tusks catch him in the side, ripping through his hunting leathers and into the flesh beneath. Robert brings his hammer down, crushing the boar's skull. But the damage is done. "The king!" Sir Balon shouts as Robert staggers and falls. Blood pours from the wound in Robert's side. Lancel Lannister kneels beside his king, pressing cloth against the injury, but it's clear that the damage is severe. "Get me back to King's Landing," Robert gasps. "I need to see Ned. Need to tell him." He coughs, and blood specks his lips. "Stannis, my brother Stannis, is the rightful king." The journey back to the capital takes 2 days. Robert grows weaker with each mile, his massive frame racked with fever from the infected wound. By the time they reach the Red Keep, he can barely remain conscious. Ned rushes to Robert's bedside. His old friend's face is grey with pain and loss of blood. "Ned," Robert whispers, "you were right. You were always right about her." "Save your strength, old friend," Ned says, though he knows it's too late. "No," Robert shakes his head weakly. "Listen to me. Stannis is the rightful king, not those bastards. Promise me, Ned. Make sure Stannis takes the throne." "I promise," Ned vows. Robert's eyes close. "She played me for a fool, Ned. For 16 years she played me for a fool." His breathing becomes laboured. "At least I die knowing the truth." King Robert Baratheon dies with the dawn, his massive frame finally still after a lifetime of excess and rage. His last words are a curse on Cersei's name and a blessing for the friend who revealed the truth. Word spreads quickly through the Red Keep. The king is dead, and the succession is in question. In her dungeon cell, Cersei learns of her husband's death with grim satisfaction. At least she won't have to face his rage again. But her satisfaction is short-lived. With Robert's death, her last hope of mercy dies as well. Stannis Baratheon has no love for the woman who cuckolded his brother, and Ned Stark's moral authority is now absolute. In the distance, ravens fly toward Dragonstone and Storm's End. Stannis must be summoned to claim his throne. Meanwhile, other ravens wing their way to Casterly Rock, carrying news that will bring the full fury of House Lannister down upon King's Landing. The king is dead, the queen is imprisoned, and the realm stands on the brink of war. But this time, the righteous hold the throne, and the truth is their weapon. The Game of Thrones has begun anew, with different players and different rules. The Raven arrives at Casterly Rock during the evening meal. Tywin Lannister sits at the head of the great table in the Hall of Heroes, conducting business as he has for decades. The massive golden lion banners hang from the walls, and the setting sun casts long shadows through the tall windows. Maester Crelin approaches with obvious reluctance, the message scroll clutched in his trembling hands. "My lord, an urgent message from King's Landing." Tywin takes the parchment without looking up from his ledger. His pale green eyes scan the contents once, then again. His face reveals nothing, but those who know him well would notice the slight tightening around his eyes. "Leave me," he commands quietly. The hall empties swiftly. Only when the last servant has departed does Tywin allow his mask to slip. His hands clench into fists, crushing the parchment. For a moment, for the most powerful man in Westeros, looks like what he truly is beneath all the calculation and control, a father whose daughter is in mortal danger. But the moment passes quickly. Tywin Lannister did not build his reputation by allowing emotion to cloud his judgment, even when his own blood is at stake. "Sir Kevan," he calls. His brother enters immediately, as if he had been waiting just outside the door. "Gather the lords, all of them. Send ravens to every bannerman from Lannisport to the Golden Tooth." Tywin's voice is cold steel. House Lannister calls its banners to war. "Brother, what has happened?" Tywin hands him the crumpled message. "Cersei has been arrested for treason and adultery. Robert is dead. Ned Stark holds the regency." His voice carries no emotion, but his eyes burn with fury. "They mean to execute my daughter." Kevin's face goes pale. "The children are bastards according to this." Tywin stands, his towering frame casting a long shadow. It matters not whether the accusations are true. What matters is that they have made the Lannisters their enemy. He moves to the window, looking out over the vast expanse of his lands. "Summon 40,000 men. We march within the fortnight." Meanwhile, Jaime Lannister rides hard toward King's Landing. He had been at Golden Tooth when word reached him of the king's hunting party and Cersei's arrest. Now his destrier's hooves thunder against the cobblestones as he races through the gates of the Red Keep. Jaime dismounts before his horse has fully stopped. His golden hair is wild from the ride, his green cloak mud-splattered and torn. He pushes past startled guards, his hand on his sword hilt. "Where is she?" he demands of the first gold cloak he encounters. The guard stammers, unsure how to respond to the Lord Commander of the King's Guard, demanding to see the imprisoned queen. Jaime doesn't wait for an answer. He storms toward the dungeons, but finds his path blocked by a dozen men in stark livery. Their spears are lowered, forming a steel barrier. "Stand aside," Jaime commands. "I'm afraid we cannot do that, Ser Jaime," comes a voice from behind him. Jaime turns to see Ned Stark approaching, flanked by Sir Barristan Selmy and Jory Cassell. The Lord of Winterfell looks older than when Jaime last saw him, worn down by the weight of recent events. "Lord Stark," Jaime says, his voice dripping with contempt. "How noble of you to arrest a woman while her husband was away hunting." "Your sister was arrested for crimes against the crown," Ned replies evenly. "Crimes you are intimately familiar with." Jaime's hand moves to his sword. "Choose your words carefully, Stark." "I choose them very carefully indeed." Ned's grey eyes are steady. Cersei Lannister committed adultery with her own brother. The children she claimed were Robert's heirs are bastards born of incest. And you, Ser Jaime, are guilty of the same crimes. The courtyard falls silent. Every eye is fixed on the two men as the tension builds like a storm ready to break. "Prove it," Jaime snarls. Ned produces a folded parchment. "A letter in your sister's hand, speaking of our beautiful golden children, and referencing your shared affection. As witness testimony from servants who saw you entering her chambers at night. The evidence is overwhelming." Jaime's world tilts. That letter should have been destroyed years ago. How did Stark get his hands on it? "Even if your accusations were true," Jaime says, "what of it? The Targaryens wed brother to sister for 300 years. "The Targaryens were kings," Ned replies. "You are not. And your sister was wed to King Robert, making her crimes adultery and treason." Jaime looks around the courtyard. He counts at least 30 men loyal to Stark, all armed and ready. Sir Barristan's hand rests on his sword hilt, his old face grim with disappointment. Even among the King's Guard, Jaime stands alone. But he is still the finest swordsman in the 7 kingdoms. "I will not stand here and listen to lies about my sister," Jaime declares, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. The sound of steel on steel rings out as 20 blades answer his challenge. But Jaime doesn't care about the odds. He lunges at Ned Stark, his golden blade seeking the heart of the man who dares threaten his twin. Jory Cassell intercepts the blow, his own sword ringing against Jaime's. The two men circle each other as the courtyard erupts in chaos. More Stark men pour in from all sides, but they hold back, waiting for their lord's command. Jaime fights like a man possessed. His sword work is beautiful and deadly, each stroke precise and fluid. He cuts down Jory with a thrust through the heart, then turns to face 2 more Stark guards. But there are too many of them. A spear thrust catches him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Another guard's sword pommel strikes him across the temple, sending him stumbling to his knees. "Enough!" Ned commands. The fighting stops. Jaime kneels in the courtyard, blood running from a cut on his forehead, his sword arm hanging useless at his side. Around him lie 3 dead Stark men, testament to his skill even when overwhelmed. "Sir Jaime Lannister," Ned says formally, "you are under arrest for treason, adultery, assault upon the Lord Regent, and murder of King's Landing guardsmen." Jaime looks up at him with hatred burning in his green eyes. "You think this ends here, Stark? You think my father will let this stand?" "Your father is welcome to petition the crown for your release," Ned replies. "Through proper channels." As Jaime is led away in chains, Ned knows the die has been cast. By arresting both Lannister twins, he has made Tywin Lannister his mortal enemy. And war is no longer a possibility. It is inevitable. Meanwhile, on the island fortress of Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon receives the ravens from King's Landing. He sits in the chamber of the painted table, studying the carved map of Westeros as he reads the messages. "My lord," Maester Pylos says, Lord Stark requests your immediate return to claim the Iron Throne as Robert's rightful heir. Stannis sets down the parchment. His jaw works silently as he considers the implications. He had always known that Cersei's children looked nothing like his brother, but he had lacked the proof to act on his suspicions. "Summon the fleet," he commands. "We sail for King's Landing within the week." "What of your brother Renly, my lord? Should we send word to Storm's End?" Stannis's face hardens. "My brother Renly will do what he always does, whatever serves his own interests. We cannot depend on him." At Storm's End, Renly Baratheon paces in his solar as he reads his own copy of the message from King's Landing. Unlike his older brother, Renly sees opportunity where others see crisis. "Sir Loras," he calls to his companion, the Knight of Flowers, "send ravens to Highgarden, Horn Hill, and Old Town. Tell them that the realm has need of strong leadership in these troubled times." "My lord," Loras says carefully, "Lord Stark supports your brother Stannis's claim. The law is clear." Renly's smile is charming and dangerous. "The law is what we make it, my dear friend. Stannis would make a terrible king, rigid, humorless, without mercy. The realm needs someone who can inspire loyalty, or not merely command it." "You mean to claim the throne yourself?" "I mean to save the realm from Stannis's iron justice and Lannister gold." Renly moves to the window, looking out over the fertile lands of the Reach. With the right alliances, anything is possible. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark stands in his solar as night falls over the capital. Reports arrive hourly from his network of ravens and riders. Tywin Lannister is calling his banners. Stannis is sailing from Dragonstone. Renly is gathering support in the Reach. The War of Five Kings is about to begin. But this time, the battle lines are drawn differently. This time, the righteous hold the capital and the moral authority of truth. But righteousness alone has never been enough to win wars. Ned knows that in the coming days, the thousands will die for the choices he made in the Godswood. The question is whether those deaths will serve justice or merely add to the realm's suffering. Outside his window, the lights of King's Landing flicker like stars. Soon, those lights will be threatened by armies marching from every direction. The Game of Thrones has begun in earnest, and there can be only one winner. The great sept of Baelor has never seen such a gathering. Lords and ladies from across the Seven Kingdoms pack the vast cathedral, their banners creating a sea of colour beneath the towering domes. The trial of Queen Cersei Lannister has drawn representatives from every major house, all eager to witness history in the making. The High Septon stands before the altar, his crystal crown catching the light that streams through the stained glass windows. He is an elderly man with a white beard that reaches his chest, and his voice carries the authority of the faith itself. "We are gathered here in the sight of the Seven to hear charges of high treason and adultery against Cersei of House Lannister," he intones. "Let all who would speak truth step forward and be heard." Cersei sits in the accused's chair, her hands bound but her head held high. She wears a simple grey dress instead of her usual finery, but her green eyes burn with defiance. Even facing death, she refuses to show weakness. To her right sits Stannis Baratheon, newly arrived from Dragonstone and formally recognized as the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. His jaw is set like granite as he stares at the woman who cuckolded his brother for 16 years. Beside him, Ned Stark serves as Hand of the King, his face grave but determined. The High Septon calls the first witness. "Let Sir Hugh of the Vale come forward." A young knight steps into the center of the sept. He had served as Jon Arryn's squire before the former Hand's mysterious death, and his testimony will be crucial. "Sir Hugh," the High Septon begins, "tell us what you observed while serving Lord Jon Arryn." "My Lord Jon spent his final months researching the lineages of great houses," Hugh states clearly. He was particularly interested in the offspring of unions between House Baratheon and other noble families. He discovered that in every case, without exception, children born of Baratheon blood carried the black hair and strong features of that house. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Everyone knows where this testimony leads. Did Lord Arryn share his concerns with anyone? The High Septon asks. He spoke often with Maester Mallion about his findings. He said the royal children bore no resemblance to King Robert, and that troubled him greatly. Hugh's voice grows stronger. 3 days before his death, Lord John told me he intended to present his findings to the king upon Robert's return from Winterfell. And what happened to Lord John Arryn? He died suddenly of a fever, Your Holiness, but he was in good health just days before. The implication hangs heavy in the air. The High Septon nods solemnly. You may step aside, Sir Hugh. The next witness is called forward, a serving woman named Senelle, who had worked in the royal chambers for 15 years. Tell us what you witnessed while serving in Maegor's Holdfast, the High Septon commands. Senelle's voice shakes, but her words are clear. I served wine and cleaned chambers, Your Holiness. Many times I saw Ser Jaime entering the Queen's chambers late at night when the king was away. Sometimes I heard them speaking of their children, calling them our golden lions, and speaking of how they would rule together. Did you ever see evidence of their intimate relationship? The serving woman's cheeks redden. Yes, Your Holiness. I once entered the Queen's chamber to change the linens and found them together. They threatened me with death if I spoke of it. Cersei's face remains impassive, but her knuckles whiten where her hands are bound. The High Septon calls witness after witness. Guards who saw Jaime's midnight visits, servants who overheard intimate conversations, a wet nurse who remembered Cersei speaking of how her children would inherit their father's golden hair and green eyes, but the father she referenced was not Robert. Then comes the most damning evidence of all. Let Maester Balabar come forward, the High Septon announces. An elderly Maester shuffles forward, carrying a leather satchel. Your Holiness, I bring records from the Citadel regarding the study of lineages and heredity. He produces a thick tome bound in cracked leather. This is the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, compiled over centuries. It documents every recorded union between House Baratheon and other noble families. The Maester opens the book and begins to read. Lady Jocelyn Baratheon wed Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. Their daughter Rhaenys had the black hair of her Baratheon blood. Lord Rhaegar Baratheon wed Queen Alyssa Velaryon. Their sons carried Baratheon features. In every case spanning 300 years, Baratheon traits have dominated. He looks up at the assembled crowd. Yet Prince Joffrey, Princess Merlella, and Prince Tommen bear golden hair and green eyes, the distinctive features of House Lannister, not Baratheon. The mathematical impossibility of the royal children's parentage becomes undeniable. Even those who came to the trial, skeptical, now lean forward with growing certainty. The High Septon then calls for the most critical evidence to be presented. Bring forth the letter, written in the accused's own hand. Ned Stark rises and approaches the altar. He produces a folded parchment and hands it to the High Septon, who unfolds it carefully. This letter was found among Queen Cersei's personal effects, the High Septon announces, written in her own hand to Sir Jaime Lannister. He begins to read aloud. My dearest brother and only love, how I long for your return to the capital. Our children grow more beautiful each day, and I see your strength in Joffrey, your grace in Myrtella, your gentle spirit in Tommen. They are the legacy of our love, the golden lions who will rule long after we are gone. Robert will never see the truth of what we have created together, for he sees only what he wishes to see. Our secret remains safe, my lion, as it always has. The words echo through the great sept like thunderclaps. Gasps and exclamations rise from the crowd. Several lords look as though they might be sick. Cersei finally speaks, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Have you finished parading your evidence like prize cattle at a fair?" The High Septon looks down at her with stern eyes. "Have you anything to say in your defense, Lady Cersei?" She stands, her chains clanking. "Defense? What defense could I possibly offer against the truth?" Her voice carries across the sept with ringing clarity. "Yes, I lay with my brother. Yes, Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen are his children, not Robert's. Yes, I deceived the realm about their parentage." The admission sends shockwaves through the crowd. Even those who expected it seem stunned to hear her confess so boldly. "But I will not apologize for loving the only man worthy of my love," Cersei continues, her voice growing stronger. "Robert was a drunkard and a fool who never deserved the throne or my bed. He would have destroyed the realm with his weakness. My children, Jaime's children, would have ruled with the strength of lions." King Stannis rises from his seat, his face like carved stone. "Do you understand what you have confessed to? You have admitted to high treason, adultery, and bearing bastards while claiming them as legitimate heirs to the Iron Throne." "I understand perfectly," Cersei replies, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I understand that you weak men could never comprehend what it means to love someone completely, to sacrifice everything for that love." "Love?" Stannis's voice is cold as winter. "You call your abomination love? You have bastardized the royal line and plunged the realm into chaos for your twisted desires." The High Septon raises his hand for silence. "Lady Cersei, by your own admission and the overwhelming evidence presented, you stand guilty of high treason and adultery. Do you wish to claim trial by combat?" Cersei looks around the sept, taking in the faces of hundreds of lords and ladies who now know her shame. A bitter smile crosses her lips. "Trial by combat? Against what evidence? Against my own words? No, Your Holiness. I have spoken the truth, and I will face the consequences of truth." "Then it falls to me to pronounce judgment," the High Septon declares. "Cersei of House Lannister, you are guilty of high treason against the crown, adultery against your royal husband, and deceiving the realm about the parentage of the royal heirs. For these crimes, the sentence is death." The words ring out like the toll of a funeral bell. Some in the crowd cheer, others sit in stunned silence. A history has been made this day. A queen has confessed to the ultimate betrayal and been condemned for it. But Cersei is not finished. She turns to face the assembled lords, her voice carrying to every corner of the great sept. "Remember this day," she calls out. "Remember that when faced with a choice between comfortable lies and terrible truth, you chose truth. See how well it serves you in the wars to come." As the guards move to escort her back to her cell, Cersei's laughter echoes through the sept, bitter, knowing, and utterly without fear. She goes to her death defiant, having spoken truths that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms forever. King Stannis stands as the crowd begins to disperse. The trial is over, but its consequences are just beginning. Word of Cersei's confession will spread across the realm like wildfire, invalidating any claim her children might have made to the throne. The bastards who would have been kings are now just bastards. The queen who ruled through deception is now a condemned traitor. And the realm stands united in the knowledge that justice, however terrible, has been served. Outside the great sept, ravens take wing toward every corner of Westeros, carrying news that will change everything. The Lannister name has been stained with shame that no amount of gold can wash clean. But in Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister cares nothing for shame, only for vengeance. The trial is over. The war is about to begin. The bells of King's Landing toll at dawn, their bronze voices echoing across the city as thousands gather in the great sept of Baelor. Today, Cersei Lannister will die for her crimes against the crown. The execution of a queen is a rare thing in the Seven Kingdoms, and commoners and nobles alike crowd every available space to witness history. King Stannis sits upon a throne hastily constructed for the occasion, his face as hard as the iron crown upon his brow. Beside him, Ned Stark stands as Hand of the King, his grey eyes reflecting the weight of what is about to unfold. Neither man takes pleasure in what must be done, but both understand its necessity. The great doors open, and Cersei emerges, flanked by a dozen guards in mail and steel. She has been allowed to dress in Lannister crimson for her final moments, the golden lion of her house embroidered across her breast. Her hands are bound, but her head remains high as she walks toward the executioner's block. The crowd falls silent as she passes. Some jeer and shout curses, but most simply stare in fascination at the woman who ruled the 7 kingdoms from behind Robert's throne for 16 years. She moves with the same regal grace that once commanded respect in throne rooms and great halls. At the block, the High Septon waits with his crystal crown glinting in the morning light. "Cersei of House Lannister," he intones, "you have been found guilty of high treason and adultery. Have you any final words before the 7? Cersei looks out over the sea of faces, her green eyes burning with the same fire that once made kings and lords tremble. When she speaks, her voice carries to every corner of the sept. "I am Cersei Lannister, daughter of Tywin, mother of lions." Her words ring clear and proud. "I loved one man in my life, and I loved him completely. If that is treason, then every woman who has ever truly loved is a traitor." She turns her gaze to King Stannis. "You may take my head, but you cannot take the truth. My children were born of love, not duty. They will be remembered when your names are dust." The executioner, a massive man from the Riverlands, raises his great sword. The steel gleams in the morning sun as the crowd holds its breath. "Any last words to the 7? The High Septon asks again. Cersei closes her eyes for a moment, and when she opens them, they are filled with a strange peace. "I pray that my father shows you the same mercy you have shown me." The sword falls with a sound like thunder. Cersei Lannister, who would have been Queen of the 7 Kingdoms until her dying day, is dead before her body hits the stone. The crowd erupts. Some cheer, some weep, or some simply stare in shock. The Golden Lioness has fallen, and with her falls the last vestige of the world that existed before Ned Stark confronted her in the Godswood. Meanwhile, in a tower of the Red Keep, 3 children watch from a high window as their mother dies below. Joffrey presses his face against the glass, his golden hair wild and his green eyes wide with something between grief and madness. "She's really dead," Myrcella whispers, tears streaming down her cheeks. Tommen, the youngest, doesn't understand what he's witnessing. Why are they hurting Mother? What did she do? Joffrey turns from the window, his face twisting with an expression of rage and anguish that makes him look far older than his 12 years. "She told the truth," he snarls. "She told them we're bastards. She told them we have no right to anything." "But we're not bastards," Tommen says in confusion. "We're princes and princess. Father is the king." "Father is dead," Joffrey shouts. "And our real father is Uncle Jaime. Mother lay with her own brother and made us monsters." His voice breaks with the weight of the revelation. "We're not royal. We're abominations." Myrcella reaches for her brother, but he pushes her away violently. "Don't touch me! Don't any of you touch me!" He storms from the room, leaving his siblings to stare after him in fear and confusion. The boy who would have been king has learned he is nothing but a bastard, and the knowledge is destroying him from within. In another part of the Red Keep, Sansa Stark sits in her chambers with her sister Arya, to both girls having been forbidden from attending the execution. But the sounds of the crowd carry through the stone walls, and both know when the deed is done. "Father was right," Sansa says quietly. "She really was a traitor." Arya, ever practical, asks the question on everyone's mind. "What happens now? To Joffrey and the others?" "I don't know," Sansa admits. But they can't stay here. Not now that everyone knows what they are. The girls fall silent, both understanding that they have witnessed the end of an era. The golden lions who once seemed so powerful and untouchable have been brought low by truth and justice. Meanwhile, 600 miles west, Tywin Lannister receives the news in his solar at Casterly Rock. The Raven arrives as he reviews maps and troop movements, planning his march on the capital. He reads the message once, but then again, his pale green eyes growing colder with each word. "My lord?" Sir Kevan asks cautiously, seeing his brother's expression. Tywin sets the parchment on his desk with deliberate care. She is dead. They executed her like a common criminal in front of half of King's Landing. His voice is perfectly controlled, but those who know him recognize the ice beneath the words. "What are your orders?" Tywin stands and moves to the great window that overlooks the harbour of Lannisport. Ships crowd the water, their holds filled with supplies for the coming campaign. 40,000 men are not enough, he says finally. Send ravens to every sellsword company in the free cities. Offer them double the usual rate. "Brother, the expense—" "Expense?" Tywin's laugh is colder than winter. "Oh, they have killed my daughter and branded my grandchildren bastards. There is no expense too great for vengeance." He turns from the window, and Kevan sees something in his brother's eyes that he has never seen before. Not calculation, not ambition, but pure burning hatred. "I want every man who can hold a sword. I want ships to blockade their ports and siege engines to break their walls. When I am finished with King's Landing, there will be nothing left but ash and memory. The old lion's grief has transformed into something terrible and implacable. Where once he might have been content with political victory, now he seeks total annihilation. Cersei's death has not ended the conflict. It has given it a focus and intensity that will consume the realm in fire. Back in King's Landing, the crowd begins to disperse as the sun climbs higher. Though Cersei's body is carried away to be prepared for burial, though where she will be laid to rest remains uncertain. The Lannister crypts at Casterly Rock seem unlikely to welcome her now. King Stannis rises from his throne, his duty done but taking no satisfaction in it. "It is finished," he tells Ned quietly. "No," Ned replies, watching the last of the crowd file out of the sept. "It has only begun." Ravens fly from King's Landing like a black cloud, carrying word of the execution to every corner of the Seven Kingdoms. In the north, the news will be greeted with grim satisfaction. In the Riverlands, with cautious relief. In Dorne, with calculating interest. But in the Westerlands, it will be greeted with fury that will shake the foundations of the realm. The lioness is dead, but her father still lives. And Tywin Lannister has never been a man to let family grievances go unanswered. The War of Five Kings is about to become something far more terrible. A war of total vengeance that will spare neither the innocent nor the guilty. In her final moments, Cersei warned that her father would show no mercy. As the realm will soon learn, the Queen of Lions spoke truly even in death. The execution is over. The real war is about to begin. The Iron Throne has never seemed more imposing than it does on this grey morning in King's Landing. Made from 1,000 swords of Aegon's enemies, the great seat towers over the throne room, as lords from across the Seven Kingdoms gather to witness the coronation of Stannis Baratheon as the rightful king. Stannis stands before the throne in black and gold, the crown of his brother heavy upon his brow. His face is set in its usual grim lines, but there is satisfaction in his eyes. After years of being overlooked and dismissed, he finally holds what is rightfully his. "Kneel," commands the High Septon, his voice echoing through the vast hall. Every lord present drops to one knee. Ned Stark kneels beside the Iron Throne, his grey eyes steady as he performs the ritual of fealty. The moment feels like the culmination of everything that began in the Godswood with Cersei's arrest. "Rise, King Stannis of the House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men, Lord of the 7 kingdoms, and Protector of the realm, the High Septon intones. But even as the lords rise to their feet, ravens are flying from King's Landing, carrying news that will challenge Stannis' authority before his reign has truly begun. The realm may have accepted the truth about Cersei's children, but that does not mean they will all bow to Stannis without question. Meanwhile, at Storm's End, Renly Baratheon reads the report of his brother's coronation with a frown. He sits in the great hall of his ancestral seat, surrounded by the lords of the Reach and Stormlands who have gathered to his banners. He moves quickly, I'll give him that, Renly says, setting down the parchment. But speed is not the same as wisdom. Lord Mace Tyrell leans forward in his chair. Your Grace, the lords of the Reach have made their choice clear. They support your claim to the Iron Throne. As do the Storm Lords, adds Lord Selwyn Tarth. You have the stronger army, the better claim to leadership, and the wisdom to rule with mercy rather than iron justice. Renly stands and moves to the great window that looks out over the fertile lands of the Reach. Fields of golden wheat stretch to the horizon, tended by small folk who know nothing of the games of kings, but will suffer for them nonetheless. My brother Stannis is the rightful king by law, Renly acknowledges. But what is law compared to the love of the people? What is right of birth compared to the ability to actually rule? He turns back to his assembled lords. Stannis would break the realm on the wheel of his justice. I would heal it. Then you will press your claim? Lord Randall Tarly asks, his scarred face stern. I will do what must be done for the good of the realm, Renly declares. Send ravens to every corner of the Reach and Stormlands. Renly Baratheon claims the Iron Throne by right of might and the love of his people. The declaration sends shockwaves through the assembled lords. Some cheer, others look troubled, but none can deny that Renly commands impressive support. With the Reach's gold and the Stormlands' steel behind him, he poses a serious threat to his brother's newly won crown. Meanwhile, far to the north in the Iron Islands, Balon Greyjoy receives word of the chaos in King's Landing with calculating eyes. He sits in the sea tower of Pike, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below as he contemplates opportunity. The Starks are distracted with southern politics, he tells his assembled captains. The Lannisters are mobilizing for war. This is our chance to reclaim what was taken from us. You mean to crown yourself again? Asks his brother Victarion. I mean to take what is ours by right of iron and salt, Balon replies. Send word to every captain in the Iron Fleet. We sail for the north within the moon. Let the green lands tear themselves apart while we reclaim our ancient holdings. The Ironborn cheer at the prospect of raiding and reaving once again. Too long have they been bound by Robert's peace. Now that peace is broken, and the iron price can be paid once more. In Winterfell, Robb Stark receives multiple ravens in a single day. One carries news of Stannis' coronation and his father's position as Hand of the King. Another brings word of Renly's rebellion. A third, most troubling of all, reports ironborn ships gathering in the western waters. What the realm is falling apart, Robb says to his mother, Lady Catelyn. Father needs our support, but the north may be under threat from the Iron Islands. Catelyn studies the messages with worry. Your father has always put duty before family. He would understand if you chose to protect the north first. But he wouldn't forgive himself if I abandoned him when he needs me most. Robb stands and moves to the great hearth where the fire crackles warmly. The north remembers its debts. Father saved the realm from Cersei's lies. Now we must save him from the chaos that followed. Within hours, ravens fly from Winterfell to every northern house. The Starks are calling their banners, but this time they march south as liberators and protectors of justice, not as rebels fighting against the crown. Meanwhile, as across the narrow sea in the free cities, Daenerys Targaryen receives reports of the turmoil in Westeros with growing interest. She sits in a garden in Pentos, her 3 dragon eggs resting in a wooden chest beside her chair. The usurper's wife is dead, Jorah Mormont reports, reading from a letter that has taken weeks to reach them. The realm is divided between multiple claimants. There has never been a better time for the return of the dragon. Daenerys touches one of the stone eggs, feeling its warmth beneath her fingers. Tell me of these claimants, Sir Jorah. Stannis Baratheon holds King's Landing with the support of the North. His younger brother Renly has claimed the throne with the backing of the Reach. The Lannisters are mobilizing their armies for war. The Iron Islands speak of independence. It is chaos, or to your grace. Chaos is opportunity, Daenerys muses. When the wolves and lions have finished tearing each other apart, they will be weak. That is when the dragon returns to reclaim what was stolen. But for now she is still too weak to act. Her dragons remain unhatched. Her army consists of a single loyal knight, and her claim exists only in songs and stories. Yet in her violet eyes burns the same fire that once conquered the 7 kingdoms. Back in King's Landing, King Stannis sits in the small council chamber, receiving reports from across the realm. The news is not encouraging. Renly has declared himself king, Ned reports grimly. He commands perhaps 60,000 men between the Reach and Stormlands. 60,000 swords following a usurper, Stannis says coldly. My own brother choosing ambition over law. Your Grace, Grandmaster Pycelle interjects nervously. Perhaps we could negotiate. Negotiate! Stannis's voice could freeze fire. He is a traitor and a usurper. There is only one penalty for treason. Ned leans forward. We cannot fight enemies on every front simultaneously. The Lannisters are mobilizing. The Iron Islands threaten the north, and now Renly splits the realm again. We need allies. We have allies, Stannis replies. We have justice, truth, and the rightful claim to the throne. That should be enough for any honorable man. But as the council meeting continues, it becomes clear that honor and justice, while powerful, may not be enough to hold the realm together. The War of 5 Kings is about to begin in earnest, and this time the battle lines are drawn not just between ambition and duty, but between different visions of what the realm should become. Outside the Red Keep, storm clouds gather over King's Landing. The wind carries the sound of drums from distant camps where armies gather their strength. 5 kings will soon claim the same crown, and only one can survive the coming storm. The Game of Thrones has begun anew, with stakes higher than ever before. In the days to come, the realm will learn whether truth and justice are stronger than gold and steel, or whether chaos will consume them all. Ravens continue to fly between castles and camps, carrying declarations of war and calls for alliance. The pieces are moving on the board, and soon the real battle for Westeros will begin. The crown sits heavy on Stannis' head, but heavier still is the weight of the realm he must now try to hold together. The lioness may be dead, but her father still lives, and Tywin Lannister has never been a man to let family wrongs go unpunished. War is coming to the 7 kingdoms once again, and this time there may be no one left alive to remember what peace looked like. The dust cloud on the horizon stretches for miles, visible from the walls of King's Landing, even at dawn. Tywin Lannister comes with fire and steel, leading the largest army the Westerlands has assembled in a generation. 45,000 men march under the crimson and gold banners of House Lannister, their armor glinting in the morning sun as they approach the capital. From the battlements of the Red Keep, King Stannis watches the approaching host with calculating eyes. He has prepared for this moment since the day his brother's wife was arrested for treason. The city's defenses have been strengthened, the walls manned with loyal soldiers, and the harbor protected by a growing fleet. How many do we count? Stannis asks his war council. 45,000, perhaps more, Ned Stark replies, lowering his spyglass. Lannister banners from Casterly Rock, Clegane from Clegane's Keep, Westerling, Rhaenys, and Marbrand. Every house sworn to Tywin has answered his call. And our numbers? 30,000 within the city walls, Sir Davos Seaworth reports. 20,000 Northmen under your brother Robb's banners, 8,000 City Watch and Royal Guards, 2,000 from houses that declared for you early. He pauses. It's not enough to match them in open battle. Stannis's jaw tightens. Then we don't fight them in open battle. King's Landing has withstood sieges before. But Tywin Lannister has not come to besiege the capital. He has come to take it by storm, to wash away his daughter's shame in rivers of blood. His army forms up before the city in perfect ranks, a crimson tide that seems to stretch from horizon to horizon. In the Lannister command tent, the old lion studies maps of King's Landing with his war council. His pale green eyes are cold as winter as he traces the city's defences with one finger. The city has 3 main gates, he tells his assembled lords. The Dragon Gate faces us directly, but it's the strongest point. The King's Gate to the south is weaker, and the Lion Gate to the west has been damaged by recent storms. My lord, Sir Kevan suggests carefully, perhaps we should attempt negotiation first. They hold Jaime hostage. If we assault the city... Tywin's gaze silences his brother immediately. Jaime knew the risks when he drew his sword against the Lord Regent. I will not sacrifice victory for one man, even if he is my son. The brutality of the statement shocks even his most hardened bannerman. But Tywin has learned to separate his roles as father and general. His grief for Cersei burns in his heart, but his mind remains focused on the larger goal, total victory over those who wronged House Lannister. We attack at dawn, he commands. 3 columns, 3 gates, overwhelming force at each point. The city will fall within a day. Meanwhile, within the Red Keep, Ned Stark faces a dilemma that would have been unthinkable weeks before. Jaime Lannister sits chained in a dungeon cell, and outside the walls, his father approaches with an army bent on destruction. You could use me, Jaime says when Ned visits his cell. Send word to my father. Offer to trade my life for his withdrawal. Ned studies the man who has been called the finest swordsman in the 7 Kingdoms. Even in chains, Jaime carries himself with arrogant pride. But there's something different in his green eyes, a recognition that the game has changed forever. Your father doesn't negotiate, Ned replies. He conquers. Then you'll have to kill me, Jaime says with a bitter laugh, because he won't stop until every stone of this city is torn down and scattered. Perhaps, but that doesn't mean I have to make it easy for him. Before dawn can break fully, the attack begins. Tywin's columns advance like clockwork, their movements coordinated with the precision that has made him the most feared military commander in Westeros. The ground shakes under the weight of charging cavalry, and the air fills with the screams of war horns. But the defenders of King's Landing are not the divided, weakened force Tywin expected to find. Under Stannis' iron discipline and Ned's strategic planning, they have prepared for exactly this assault. At the Dragon Gate, northern pikemen form a bristling wall of steel, points behind the heavy portcullis. Archers line the walls above, their arrows finding gaps in Lannister armor with deadly precision. What should have been a swift breakthrough becomes a grinding, bloody stalemate. "The gate holds!" Robb Stark calls from the battlements, his sword red with the blood of Lannister soldiers who attempted to scale the walls. Around him, northern bannermen fight with the fury of winter wolves, each man knowing that their lord's honour depends on their courage. At the King's Gate, Sir Davos Seaworth commands a mixed force of royal guards and Dragonstone men. The Onion Knight has no noble birth or legendary reputation, but his men follow him because he understands the value of every life under his command. "Make them pay for every foot," he shouts as Lannister rams pound against the gate. "Every man they lose here is one less for the next assault." But it's at the Lion Gate that the real surprise awaits Tywin's forces. As his western column charges toward what intelligence suggested was the weakest point in the city's defences, they trigger a trap that nearly turns the battle in a single moment. Hidden beneath the streets leading to the Lion Gate are caches of wildfire, the same substance that burned the Targaryen fleet decades ago. Pyromancers loyal to King Stannis have spent days preparing this deadly surprise, and when the Lannister vanguard reaches the killing ground, the very earth erupts in green flame. The explosion can be heard across the city and beyond. Hundreds of Lannister soldiers vanish in an instant, consumed by fire that burns so hot it melts steel. The western column staggers backward in shock and horror as the wildfire continues to burn, creating a barrier of green flame that renders the Lion Gate impassable. From his position with the command group, Tywin watches his carefully planned assault crumble. The coordinated attack on 3 gates has become a desperate struggle at 2, with his forces taking horrific casualties for minimal gain. "My lord," Sir Adam Marbrand calls out, his face grim with battlefield reports. "The western column is broken. The Dragon Gate assault has stalled. Only the King's Gate shows any progress." For a moment, something flickers across Tywin's face. Surprise, perhaps even respect for enemies who have outmaneuvered him. But the moment passes quickly, replaced by the cold fury that has defined his response to his daughter's death. "Send word to the fleet," he commands. "Begin the bombardment of the harbour, and bring up the siege towers. If we cannot take the gates quickly, we'll take the walls instead." But the Lannister fleet finds itself facing an unexpected challenge as well. Ships flying the Stag and Direwolf banners have moved to block the harbour mouth, but their crews prepared to fight and die before allowing enemy vessels to reach the docks. The Battle of the Blackwater has begun early, and with very different participants than history might have expected. Where once the Lannisters might have faced a divided city commanded by an inexperienced boy king, they now confront a united defence led by 2 of the finest military minds in Westeros. As the day wears on, it becomes clear that Tywin's overwhelming force advantage is not enough to guarantee swift victory. The defenders fight with the desperation of men protecting their homes and the confidence of those who know their cause is just. Every street corner becomes a fortress, every building a potential death trap. "They're bleeding us white," Sir Kevan reports as the sun reaches its zenith. "Yet we've taken perhaps 1,000 casualties and gained nothing but rubble." Tywin's face remains expressionless as he surveys the battlefield. His tactical genius has been stymied by enemies who understand that they cannot match his numbers, but can make those numbers irrelevant through superior preparation and unified command. "Pull back the assault troops," he orders finally. "Establish siege lines. If they want to make this a long war, then we'll give them one." But even as his forces dig in for a protracted siege, Tywin knows that time is not on his side. Every day the siege continues, allows Stannis to call in more allies, gives Renly time to march north with his massive army, and provides opportunities for other enemies to strike at Lannister holdings. The old lion has learned a bitter lesson this day. Grief and rage, however justified, are poor substitutes for the cold calculation that once made him invincible. His emotional investment in avenging Cersei has led him into a trap of his own making. As night falls over King's Landing, the city still stands defiant behind its walls. The Lannister host camps before the gates like a crimson stain upon the landscape, their plans for swift victory reduced to ash and bitter disappointment. In the Red Keep, King Stannis and his war council survey their success with grim satisfaction. They have proven that united purpose and careful preparation can stand against even the most formidable enemy. But they also know that this is only the beginning of a war that will consume the realm. The Lion of Lannister has been bloodied, but he is far from beaten. And in the distance, other armies march toward the capital, drawn by the promise of power and the scent of weakness. The War of 5 Kings has begun in earnest, and King's Landing has become the eye of a storm that will reshape the 7 kingdoms forever. The throne room of the Red Keep has never felt colder. King Stannis sits upon the Iron Throne, his iron crown catching the morning light that streams through the tall windows. Before him kneel 24 lords and knights who served the Lannister cause, their hands bound and their heads bowed in submission or defiance. "Sir Meryn Trant," Stannis calls, his voice echoing through the hall. "You served as a member of Joffrey's Kingsguard, knowing him to be a bastard born of incest. How do you answer this charge?" The knight raises his head, his scarred face defiant. "I served the king I was sworn to serve, your grace, but I knew nothing of bastardry or incest." "Ignorance is not a defense when the truth was available to any who chose to see it," Stannis replies coldly. "You chose willful blindness over duty to the realm. The penalty is death." One by one, the accused are brought forward. Some protest their innocence, others confess and beg for mercy, but Stannis's justice is as unyielding as winter. He has spent years watching corrupt men prosper while honorable ones suffered, and now that he holds absolute power, he intends to cleanse the realm of such corruption. Ned Stark stands at the king's right hand, his face troubled by the proceedings. While he agrees that justice must be served, the systematic nature of these trials troubles his northern sense of mercy. "Your Grace," he says quietly during a brief recess, "that perhaps we might consider exile for some of these men. They followed orders, as soldiers must." Stannis's grey eyes are like flint. "Exile? So they might return with foreign gold to trouble the realm again?" "No, Lord Stark. Justice delayed is justice denied. The realm will know that treason carries a price, regardless of rank or excuse." Meanwhile, in the sept that has become a second seat of power, the High Septon holds his own trials for those who supported false claims to the throne. The faith has been empowered by Stannis's victory, and they intend to use that power to purify the realm of moral corruption. "Lord Janos Slynt," the High Septon intones, "you sold your loyalty to the highest bidder and betrayed your sworn duty to the crown. The Seven demand justice for such sins." Slynt falls to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Your Holiness, I was promised gold for my men, for their families. I never meant harm to the realm." "The road to Seven Hells is paved with good intentions," the High Septon replies. "You will confess your sins before the assembled faith, and perhaps the Seven will show mercy your earthly judges cannot. But it is not only the high and mighty who face judgment." In the lower courts of King's Landing, magistrates appointed by Stannis systematically investigate every man and woman who served the false regime. Servants who carried messages, merchants who provided supplies, even septons who blessed the bastard children, all must answer for their actions during the reign of lies. The efficiency of it is breathtaking and terrible. Stannis has brought the same methodical approach that made him a master of siegecraft to the task of governing, and the result is a justice system that operates with the precision of a war machine. In her tower chamber, a new voice begins to whisper in the king's ear. Melisandre of Ashai arrived the day after the failed Lannister assault, her red robes and foreign manner stirring unease among the court. But Stannis listens to her words with growing interest, for she speaks of destiny and divine purpose. "The Lord of Light has shown me visions, your grace," she says, her red eyes reflecting the flames that dance in the hearth. "You are Azor Ahai reborn, the prince who was promised. Your victory over the lion proves that Rella favors your cause." Stannis studies her with calculating eyes. He has little patience for religious fanatics, but he cannot ignore the fact that her arrival coincided with his triumph over Tywin's supposedly invincible army. "If your god favors justice, then perhaps there is truth in your words," he says finally. "But I will not abandon the faith of the Seven for foreign gods. The Lord of Light does not ask you to abandon anything, your grace. He asks only that you recognize the truth, that light must drive out darkness, that justice must burn away corruption." Her voice grows stronger, more compelling. "The false gods failed to protect the realm from Cersei's lies. Only Rella saw the truth and gave you the strength to act upon it." The words find fertile ground in Stannis' mind. He has always believed that the gods should reward righteousness and punish wickedness. If this Lord of Light truly serves justice, then perhaps alliance with his priestess is not folly but wisdom. Meanwhile, in the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, 3 children await their fate. Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella have been prisoners since their mother's arrest. But now their future must be decided by the man they once would have called uncle. Joffrey has grown thin and wild during his captivity, his golden hair unkempt, and his green eyes filled with a madness that grows stronger each day. When guards come to escort him to the throne room, he laughs with bitter hysteria. "Come to finish what you started, uncle?" he asks Stannis, using the title like a curse. "Come to execute the boy who would have been your nephew?" "You are no nephew of mine," Stannis replies without emotion. "You are the bastard son of Jaime Lannister, born of incest and lies. Why, your very existence is an affront to law and nature." "Then kill me!" Joffrey shouts, his voice cracking. "Kill me and be done with it. But know that every night when you close your eyes, you'll remember that you murdered a child for the crimes of his parents." The accusation hangs in the air like poison. Even Stannis, for all his iron resolve, feels the weight of what he contemplates. Joffrey may be a bastard and a product of abomination, but he is still a boy of 12 years. It is Melisandre who breaks the silence. "Your Grace, the Lord of Light does not require the blood of children. Exile them to Essos, beyond the reach of those who might use their names to challenge your rule. Let them live as commoners, forgotten by history." Ned Stark nods his agreement. Mercy shown to children reflects well upon a king's character. "Why, your Grace, the realm will remember your wisdom." Stannis considers this counsel for long moments before speaking. "Very well. The bastards will be exiled to the free cities with sufficient gold to live as merchants or craftsmen. But if any of them ever returns to Westeros, the penalty will be immediate death." The decision sends ripples throughout the court. Some see it as weakness, others as wisdom. But all recognize that Stannis has shown he can temper justice with mercy when circumstances warrant it. Yet even as the king shows mercy to children, his justice continues to fall heavily upon adult supporters of the false regime. Every day brings new trials, new confessions, new executions. The sept bells toll constantly for the dead, and the ravens that fly from King's Landing carry lists of names that grow longer with each passing week. In the Westerlands, word of this systematic purge creates the very resistance Stannis sought to prevent. Lords who might have bent the knee now gather in hidden councils, speaking of rebellion and rescue. Tywin's army may have failed to take King's Landing, but the Old Lion still commands vast resources and unwavering loyalty from his bannermen. "He means to destroy us all," Lord Lefford says grimly as he meets with other Westerlander lords in a secret gathering. "Every man who ever served House Lannister faithfully will face his justice before the year is out." "Then we give him a war he cannot win," replies Ser Adam Marbrand. "The Westerlands are rich in gold and iron. We can hire sellswords, buy ships, and fund rebellions in every corner of the realm." The systematic nature of Stannis' justice, intended to prevent future rebellion, instead creates the conditions for immediate resistance. The king's strength, his unwavering commitment to law and order, becomes his weakness when applied without consideration for political consequences. Back in King's Landing, the faith militant begins to take shape under the High Septon's guidance. Stannis has given them authority to enforce moral law throughout the realm, and they intend to use that authority to root out corruption wherever it hides. The sins of the flesh have corrupted this realm for too long. The High Septon preaches to growing crowds in the great sept of Baelor. Incest, adultery, bastardry, all must be cleansed by righteous fire. The king has shown us the way by executing the faithless queen. Now we must follow his example in every city and town. The movement grows with frightening speed, fed by years of resentment against corrupt nobles and moral decay. Common folk who have suffered under the whims of their betters see opportunity for justice in Stannis' rigid righteousness. As the sun sets over King's Landing, the city feels transformed. Gone is the atmosphere of casual corruption that marked Robert's reign. In its place stands something harder and colder, a justice that asks no questions about intention or circumstance, only about guilt and punishment. King Stannis has claimed his throne through truth and righteousness, but the realm is learning that truth can be as sharp as a blade, and righteousness as implacable as stone. The king's justice burns away corruption like fire, but fire consumes the innocent along with the guilty. In the days to come, the Seven Kingdoms will discover whether a realm can survive being ruled by perfect justice, or whether mercy and compromise are not weaknesses to be despised, but necessities for any kingdom that wishes to endure. The king sits upon his throne, dispensing justice without favor or feeling. But outside the walls of King's Landing, his enemies gather strength, and his allies begin to question whether the price of righteousness might be too high for any mortal kingdom to bear. The banners of 100,000 men stretch across the fields before Storm's End, like a vast meadow of silk and steel. The golden rose of Tyrell flies beside the crowned stag of Renly Baratheon, or supported by the arms of every great house of the Reach and half the lords of the Stormlands. It is the largest army assembled since the War of the Usurper, and it belongs to the younger brother who would be king. Renly sits his destrier at the head of his host, resplendent in armor of green and gold. At 21, he possesses all the charisma that his older brother lacks, handsome, charming, beloved by small folk and nobles alike. If kingship were determined by popular acclaim rather than legal right, there would be no question of his legitimacy. "Look at them all," he says to Sir Loras Tyrell, who rides at his side. 100,000 swords raised for the rightful king. "The rightful king sits in King's Landing," Loras replies quietly. The Knight of Flowers has grown troubled by this campaign, though his love for Renly keeps him loyal. "Your brother Stannis holds the Iron Throne by law." "Law?" Renly's laugh carries across the field. "What law gave Robert the crown? The law of conquest, nothing more. I have 100,000 men who say I should be king. What more law do I need?" But even as Renly speaks with confidence, he knows that his brother's position has grown stronger with each passing week. Reports from King's Landing tell of systematic purges that have eliminated Lannister influence, of the faith supporting Stannis' cause with religious fervor, of northern armies standing ready to march wherever their king commands. Meanwhile, within the walls of Storm's End, King Stannis prepares for a confrontation he had hoped to avoid. He has come south with 20,000 men, leaving Ned Stark to hold King's Landing against any Lannister resurgence. The castle of his birth feels strange to him now, transformed from sanctuary into the stage for fraternal warfare. "He could have been my greatest supporter," Stannis says to Melisandre, as they stand in the castle's great hall. "Renly has always been gifted with easy friendship, able to inspire loyalty where I can only command obedience. Together, we could have united the realm without bloodshed." "The Lord of Light does not will it so," the Red Priestess replies, her ruby glowing in the firelight. "Your brother has chosen his path, and it leads away from righteousness. Some souls can only find their purpose through destruction." Stannis studies her with calculating eyes. Since arriving in King's Landing, Melisandre has proven her worth as a counselor, but her words often carry implications that trouble him. Still, he cannot deny that her arrival coincided with his greatest victories. "What do you counsel?" he asks. "Meet with him. Offer him one final chance to bend the knee and serve the rightful king. If he refuses..." She leaves the sentence unfinished, but her meaning is clear. The parley takes place at sunset, in a pavilion erected between the two armies. Stannis arrives with only Ser Davos and 2 guards, demonstrating either supreme confidence or calculated disdain for his brother's superior numbers. Renly comes with Lord Mace Tyrell and Ser Loras, his golden crown gleaming in the dying light. The brothers face each other across a simple wooden table, and the resemblance between them is striking despite their different temperaments. Both carry the strong Baratheon features, and both possess the same steel-blue eyes, but where Stannis appears carved from granite, Renly seems forged from burnished gold. "Brother," Renly says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, "you look well. Kingship suits you." "Does it?" Stannis's voice is cold as winter. "I hadn't noticed, being too busy cleaning up the mess your rebellion has created." "My rebellion?" Renly's eyebrows rise in mock surprise. "I prefer to call it my campaign. A king must have support, and support must be earned. Something you might consider learning." The barb hits home, but Stannis's expression doesn't change. "I am the rightful king, Robert's heir by law and custom. Your claim rests on nothing but ambition and stolen loyalty." "My claim rests on the love of the people and the support of the realm's greatest lords," Renly counters. What does yours rest on? A piece of parchment? The words of dead men?" "Justice," Stannis replies simply. "Law, order. The principles that separate civilization from chaos." He leans forward. "Principles you once claimed to believe in." For a moment, something flickers across Renly's face. Doubt, perhaps, or the memory of simpler times when they were just brothers rather than rival kings. But the moment passes quickly. "I believe in the good of the realm," Renly says. "And the realm would be better served by a king who can inspire loyalty rather than merely demand it." "Then inspire your followers to bend the knee to their rightful king," Stannis demands. "Acknowledge my claim, and I will name you my heir until I have sons of my own. Serve me faithfully, and you will be rewarded with lands and titles befitting a king's brother." "Serve you?" Renly's laugh is bitter. "Serve the brother who has spent his life looking down on me, who sees every smile as weakness and every kindness as folly? I think not." Stannis stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the ground. "Then you have chosen treason over family, ambition over duty. The blood that flows tomorrow will be on your hands." "The blood that flows will be yours," Renly replies, rising as well. "I have 100,000 men to your 20,000. Mathematics is not on your side, brother." As the two kings part, both knowing that words have failed, and only steel can settle their dispute, neither notices the shadow that detaches itself from Melisandre's form in the candlelight. Dark as midnight, and silent as death, it follows Renly's party back toward their vast encampment. The night passes quietly for most of the 100,000 soldiers camped before Storm's End. Guards walk their posts, horses stamp restlessly in their lines, and men gather around cookfires to share stories and fears. None of them know that before dawn breaks, their cause will die with their king. Renly sleeps in a great pavilion at the heart of his army, protected by rings of loyal guards and surrounded by the banners of houses sworn to his service. Ser Loras stands watch outside, his white cloak stirring in the night breeze as he maintains his vigil over the man he loves more than life itself. Inside the tent, Renly dreams of golden crowns and cheering crowds, of a realm united under his banner, where justice is tempered by mercy and strength is balanced by wisdom. It is a pleasant dream, full of the hope and ambition that have driven him to challenge his brother's claim. The shadow enters his tent like smoke through silk, unseen and unfelt, until it stands beside his sleeping form. For a moment it pauses, as if even supernatural forces might hesitate before committing regicide. Then duty overcomes hesitation, and the shadow's blade finds Renly's heart. The young king dies without waking, his dreams transforming seamlessly into the final sleep. There is no cry of alarm, no struggle, no sound, save the whisper of steel through flesh and the soft sigh of a soul departing its mortal shell. Sir Loras discovers the body when he enters the tent at dawn to wake his king for the day's battle. The scream that tears from his throat carries across the entire camp, a sound of such anguish that even hardened veterans feel their blood turn cold. Murder! The king is dead! Murder! The camp explodes into chaos as word spreads like wildfire through the ranks. Renly Baratheon, the charming young king who would have united the realm through love rather than fear, lies dead in his tent with no sign of his killer, save a wound that pierces his heart with surgical precision. Some cry for vengeance against unknown assassins. Others whisper of sorcery and dark magic. But most simply stand in stunned silence, watching their cause crumble with their king's death. Lord Mace Tyrell arrives at the scene within minutes, his face pale with shock and calculation. The Reach's greatest lord has invested everything in Renly's cause, and now he must decide whether to continue a hopeless war or make peace with the brother he helped to defy. "Gather the lords," he commands. "We must decide what to do." The war council that convenes in the early morning hours is unlike any in the history of Westeros. 100,000 men wait outside while their leaders debate whether to continue fighting for a dead king's memory or submit to the brother they had planned to destroy. "We could crown another," suggests Lord Randil Tarly. "Choose a new candidate and continue the fight." "Choose whom?" Lord Mace asks bitterly. "Who among us has claim to the throne? Who commands the loyalty these men gave to Renly?" "We fight for justice," Sir Loras says, his voice raw with grief, "for the memory of the best king the Seven Kingdoms never had." But even as he speaks, and the Knight of Flowers knows that memories cannot command armies or inspire the desperate loyalty required for victory against impossible odds, Renly's charisma was personal, non-transferable, and with his death, the cause dies as well. By noon, white banners appear along the lines of Renly's army. One by one, the great lords of the Reach and Stormlands send envoys to Storm's End, offering submission to King Stannis and begging mercy for their rebellion. Stannis receives their submissions in the great hall of his ancestral seat, his face showing no satisfaction in victory or grief for his brother's death. Justice has been served, order restored, and the realm's greatest army now serves the rightful king. "Your Grace," Lord Mace Tyrell says, as he kneels before the Iron Throne's rightful occupant, "as the Reach submits to your authority and begs forgiveness for our mistaken loyalty." "Submission is not enough," Stannis replies coldly. "Trust must be earned through more than words." It is then that the marriage proposal is made. Margaery Tyrell, Renly's widow in all but law, will wed King Stannis to cement the alliance between Crown and Reach. The political marriage will transform the Tyrells from rebels into the most powerful supporters of Stannis's reign. "Your Grace," Margaery says when brought before the king, "I offer my hand in marriage and the eternal loyalty of House Tyrell." Stannis studies the young woman with calculating eyes. She is beautiful, intelligent, and comes with the backing of the realm's richest region. More importantly, marrying her will remove any possibility of the Tyrells switching sides again. Very well, he decides. The marriage will take place within the fortnight. Let it be known that House Tyrell serves the crown with honor. As the sun sets over the field where 100,000 men had prepared for battle, peace descends instead. Renly's death has ended the war before it could truly begin, transforming certain bloodshed into political alliance. But in his tent, Sir Loras Tyrell weeps for the king who might have been. The brother Stannis never truly knew, and the dream of a gentler kingdom that died with a shadow's blade. The realm is more united now than it has been in years, but the price of that unity weighs heavy on those who loved the Golden Prince. The War of 5 Kings has become the War of 3 Kings, and Stannis Baratheon stands stronger than ever before. Yet even in victory, or the king feels no joy, only the cold satisfaction of duty fulfilled and justice served. The great pyramid of Meereen stands unfinished against the azure sky, its slaves laboring under the scorching sun as they have for countless generations. But in the distance, smoke rises from the harbour, where ships bearing foreign banners have begun to gather. Word travels quickly in the slave cities, and the whispers speak of a young queen with silver hair and dragons who comes to break chains and topple masters. Daenerys Targaryen sits in a pavilion outside the city walls, studying maps of Westeros that have grown more precious to her than gold. The reports from across the narrow sea paint a picture of chaos that fills her violet eyes with calculation and hope. Her 3 dragon eggs rest in ornate holders beside her chair, and their surfaces warm to the touch and seeming to pulse with inner fire. "Tell me again of this King Stannis," she commands Jorah Mormont, who has just returned from the harbour with the latest news from Westerosi traders. "He rules by law and justice, your grace," Sir Jorah reports, unrolling a letter that bears the seal of a Tiroshi merchant. "The former queen was executed for adultery and treason. Her children have been exiled as bastards. The faith supports him, the North stands behind him, and he has just absorbed the armies of the Reach through marriage." Daenerys traces a finger along the outline of Westeros on her map. And yet there are those who oppose him? The Lannisters still resist from the Westerlands. The Iron Islands have declared independence. Some houses remain uncommitted, waiting to see which way the wind blows. Jorah hesitates. "Your Grace, by all accounts, Stannis Baratheon is the rightful king. His claim is legitimate." "Legitimate?" Daenerys' laugh is soft but sharp. "Robert Baratheon was a usurper who stole my father's throne through conquest and rebellion. How can his brother's claim be legitimate when it rests on the foundation of usurpation?" She stands and walks to the edge of the pavilion, looking out over the besieged city. Somewhere in those pyramids, masters count their coins while slaves suffer in darkness. The parallel to the great houses of Westeros is not lost on her. "This Stannis may rule through law, but I will rule through justice," she declares. "He breaks the old order to enforce his rigid codes. I will break it to build something better." "The realm is more united now than it has been in years," Jorah warns. "If we wait for a better opportunity—" "There will be no better opportunity," Daenerys interrupts. "Stannis' harsh justice will create enemies faster than his victories can eliminate them. When the realm grows tired of his iron fist, they will welcome the dragon's return. But first, she needs the strength to make that return possible. The dragons are still small, her following limited, her resources finite. The conquest of Slaver's Bay must accelerate if she hopes to build the power base necessary to reclaim her birthright." Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Lord Varys moves through the shadows of the Red Keep with even greater care than usual. Or the Spider has survived every purge and political upheaval by reading the currents of power before they change, and now those currents whisper of dangerous times ahead. He finds King Stannis in the throne room, conducting the morning's audiences with the same grim efficiency that marks everything he does. The Iron Throne seems to fit the new king perfectly, sharp, uncomfortable, demanding constant vigilance from those who would claim it. "Your Grace," Varys says, when called forward, his voice smooth as silk, "the reports from your spies across the narrow sea." Stannis takes the offered parchments and reads them with growing interest. The Targaryen girl grows bolder. She moves against Meereen with surprising speed. "Dragons grow quickly when properly fed, Your Grace," Varys observes carefully, "but as do the ambitions of those who command them." The king's grey eyes fix on his spy master with sudden intensity. "You speak as one who knows more than he reveals, Lord Varys. What are your thoughts on this exiled princess?" It is a moment that will define the future, a choice between the stability Varys has spent years cultivating and the restoration he has secretly worked toward. The spider considers his words with the care of a man whose life depends on them. I serve the realm, your grace, as I have always served it. But the realm's needs may not always align with the immediate desires of its rulers. He pauses delicately. The Targaryen dynasty ruled for 3 centuries before the rebellion. There are those who remember. Stannis' face darkens. Those who remember should recall why my brother led that rebellion. Aerys was mad, and his son kidnapped a highborn lady. The Targaryens brought their downfall upon themselves. Indeed, your grace. And yet, Varys lets the words hang in the air like incense. Daenerys Targaryen is not her father. From all reports, she shows remarkable wisdom for one so young. Perhaps the sins of the father need not pass to the daughter. The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of urgent news from the dungeons. Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf who has been held prisoner since his brother's failed rescue attempt, has vanished from his cell during the night. The guards found nothing but an empty chamber and a tunnel that seems to lead into the ancient sewers beneath the Red Keep. "Find him," Stannis commands coldly. A Lannister loose in the city is a danger to every loyal citizen. But Tyrion is already beyond the reach of the king's justice. Hidden in a wine barrel aboard a ship bound for Pentos, the dwarf drinks stolen wine and plans his revenge against those who destroyed his family. His brilliant mind, freed from the constraints of loyalty to house and kin, now turns toward darker purposes. "They think they've won," he mutters to himself as the ship rocks gently in the harbor. "They think the lion is broken, but lions are most dangerous when wounded." The ship that carries Tyrion also bears other passengers fleeing Stannis' justice. Lannister knights who escaped the purges, merchants who profited under Cersei's reign, minor lords who chose the wrong side and now seek new opportunities across the narrow sea. In the free cities, these exiles find each other and begin to coalesce into something resembling a government in exile. They carry with them the gold and connections that might yet purchase redemption or revenge, depending on how the winds of war ultimately blow. Word of their gathering reaches Daenerys through the network of traders, sellswords, and spies that connects every port from Braavos to Volantis. The irony is not lost on her. The same gold that once bought her family's destruction might now fund their restoration. "The Lannisters come seeking alliance," she tells Jorah as they discuss the latest reports. "They offer gold, ships, and knowledge of Westeros in exchange for passage back to reclaim their holdings. Your Grace, these are the very people who helped destroy your family," Jorah warns. "Their word cannot be trusted." "Their word? Perhaps not," Daenerys agrees. "But their hatred for Stannis Baratheon burns as hot as dragonfire. Sometimes the enemy of one's enemy can become a useful tool." She doesn't yet commit to any alliance, but she doesn't reject their overtures either. Let them stew in exile while she builds her strength. When the time comes to strike at Westeros, every sword will be needed. As summer wanes toward autumn, the pieces begin moving on a board that spans 2 continents. In Meereen, Daenerys' forces tighten their siege around the Great Pyramid, each victory bringing her closer to the power she needs. In King's Landing, Stannis' iron justice creates new enemies, even as it eliminates old ones. And in the free cities, exiled lords and displaced sellswords whisper of dragons and restoration, that of gold enough to buy armies and ships enough to carry them home. The Game of Thrones is expanding beyond the borders of Westeros, drawing in players who have waited long for their chance to influence the fate of kingdoms. The spider spins new webs in the shadows of the Red Keep, his loyalty beginning its slow shift from stability to restoration. The imp plots his vengeance from taverns and brothels across the narrow sea. The Dragon Queen conquers cities and gathers strength for the day when 3 dragons will darken the skies above King's Landing. In the distance, storm clouds gather both literally and metaphorically. The War of 5 Kings may have become the War of 3, but new claimants are preparing to enter the game. The dragon stirs in exile, and its fire will reshape the world when it finally returns home. Stannis sits his iron throne in apparent triumph, master of a realm united under his harsh but just rule. But across the sea, ancient powers are awakening, and the Game of Thrones is about to expand beyond anything the Seven Kingdoms have seen since Aegon's conquest. The dragon dreams of home, and soon those dreams will become reality. The dragons cast shadows over Blackwater Bay, as dark as storm clouds, their wings beating against the dawn sky with a sound like thunder. 3 beasts circle the harbour of King's Landing. Drogon, black as midnight with eyes like coals, Rhaegal, green and bronze with breath like molten copper, and Viserion, cream and gold with flames that burn white as lightning. Upon Drogon's back sits Daenerys Targaryen, her silver hair streaming like a banner as she surveys the city that was once her family's seat of power. Behind her, a fleet of 200 ships bears an army unlike anything Westeros has seen since Aegon's conquest. Unsullied spearmen in their thousands, Dothraki horsemen with curved blades gleaming, Second Sons and other sellsword companies bought with Myrine's gold. Dracarys, she whispers, and the word carries on the wind like a promise of fire and blood. From the walls of the Red Keep, King Stannis watches the approaching host with calculating eyes. 2 years of harsh but just rule have transformed the realm, but not always as he intended. His iron justice has eliminated corruption and established order, but it has also created enemies in every corner of the 7 kingdoms. "How many ships?" he asks Ser Davos, who stands at his side with a spyglass trained on the harbour. 200 at least, Your Grace. Perhaps 50,000 men, if the reports of her conquest of Slavers Bay are true. Davos lowers the glass, his weathered face grim. "And the dragons, Your Grace. 3 of them, full-grown." Stannis' jaw tightens. He has prepared for rebellion, for invasion by conventional forces, even for the return of the Targaryens. But dragons are weapons of the old world, creatures of myth and legend that dwarf all normal military calculations. "Summon the War Council," he commands, "and bring me Melisandre." The Red Priestess arrives within minutes, her ruby glowing like captured fire as she enters the throne room. In the 2 years since Renly's death, she has grown ever more influential at court, her whispers of divine destiny finding fertile ground in Stannis' rigid mind. "You have seen this in your fires," Stannis states rather than asks. "The Lord of Light has shown me flames, Your Grace. Great battles between ice and fire, between the old gods and the new." Her red eyes reflect the torchlight as she speaks. "This is the test that will prove you are truly Azor Ahai reborn. And if I fail this test?" Melisandre's smile is enigmatic and terrible. "The night is dark and full of terrors, Your Grace, but the dawn always comes for those with faith." Meanwhile, in the chamber that serves as the council room, Ned Stark faces the hardest choice of his life. Reports from across the realm paint a grim picture. Northern lords questioning why their sons die for southern politics. Riverlands houses remembering heiress Targaryen's madness, but growing weary of Stannis' harshness. Even some Reach lords beginning to whisper of alternatives despite the Tyrell marriage. "We could negotiate," Grand Maester Pycelle suggests nervously. "Perhaps offer the Targaryen girl a place in the succession, a marriage alliance." "She comes with fire and blood," Stannis interrupts coldly. "There will be no negotiation with usurpers and pretenders." Ned studies the map spread across the table, his fingers tracing the positions of loyal forces throughout the city. 30,000 men hold King's Landing against 50,000 invaders, but numbers mean little when the enemy commands dragons. "Your Grace," he says carefully, "perhaps we should consider the civilian population. If dragons attack the city will hold," Stannis declares with iron certainty. "Justice and law will triumph over fire and chaos. It is the natural order of things." But even as the king speaks with confidence, the first dragon passes overhead, its shadow falling across the throne room like a prophecy of doom. Through the tall windows, they can see Drogon's massive form circling the Red Keep, and for a moment, even Stannis' iron composure seems to crack. The battle begins at noon, when Daenerys' fleet enters the harbour in force. Stannis' ships, outnumbered but well-positioned, attempt to block the channel with chains and fire ships. For a brief moment, it seems the harbour defences might hold. Then Rhaegal descends from the sky like a green thunderbolt, his bronze flames turning wooden ships to floating pyres in seconds. The harbour chain melts under dragonfire, and the Targaryen fleet surges forward toward the docks. "All batteries loose," Sir Davos commands from the harbour fortifications. Scorpion bolts fill the air like deadly rain, but the dragons are swift and cunning, weaving between the projectiles with grace that belies their massive size. Viserion's white fire turns the mudgate to molten stone, while Drogon's black flames clear the walls of defenders. Within an hour, the outer defences of King's Landing are breached, and Targaryen forces pour into the city like a silver tide. But Stannis has not remained idle during his 2 years on the throne. The city's defences have been strengthened, the streets prepared for urban warfare, and hidden caches of wildfire placed at strategic points throughout the capital. When Drogon descends to strafe the Street of Steel, his flames trigger one of these caches. The resulting explosion sends a pillar of green fire reaching toward the heavens, and the dragon himself staggers in the air, singed by flames that burn even hotter than his own breath. "Now," Stannis commands from the Red Keep. "While they're disordered." The counterattack comes from 3 directions at once. King's forces surge from prepared positions, while Melisandre's shadows dance among the enemy ranks, sowing confusion and terror. For a time, it seems that iron discipline and supernatural aid might triumph over dragons and superior numbers. But Daenerys adapts quickly to the changing battlefield. Her Dothraki pour through the burned gates like a brown tide, their curved blades cutting down defenders with ruthless efficiency. The unsullied form disciplined ranks that advance steadily through the city's narrow streets, their shields locked and spears gleaming. And overhead, 3 dragons rain fire on a city that has not known such devastation since Aegon's landing 3 centuries ago. In the throne room, Ned Stark faces his moment of choice. A messenger brings word that northern forces are being surrounded near the Dragon Gate, that the Riverland soldiers are breaking under dragon attack, that even the disciplined men of Dragonstone are beginning to waver. "Your Grace," he says to Stannis, who stands immobile before the Iron Throne, "we must consider surrender. The city cannot hold." "The city will hold," Stannis repeats, but for the first time, doubt creeps into his voice. Justice cannot be defeated by mere force. Through the great windows, they can see Drogon perched atop Baela's sept, his black scales gleaming in the firelight of a dozen burning buildings. The sight is magnificent and terrible, a living embodiment of Targaryen power returned to the world. Melisandre approaches the king, her hands wreathed in shadows that seem to move with lives of their own. "Give me leave, Your Grace. The Lord of Light can still grant you victory, but the price—" "What price?" Stannis demands. "Everything," she replies simply. "Every life in this city, friend and foe alike. The dragons can be stopped, but only by unleashing forces that will consume all in their path. It is then that Ned Stark makes his choice, not between honor and pragmatism, but between 2 different definitions of honor. The honor that serves kings and laws, or the honor that serves people and life itself. "No," he says quietly, stepping between Melisandre and the king. "Your Grace, I cannot allow it. There are innocents in this city. Children, women, people who never chose this war." Stannis's grey eyes fix on his hand with something approaching shock. "You would betray your king?" "I would save my king from becoming a monster," Ned replies steadily. "Some victories cost more than defeat, Your Grace. This is one of them." The confrontation between king and hand is interrupted by the arrival of Daenerys herself. She enters the throne room flanked by unsullied guards, her violet eyes taking in the scene with calculating intelligence. Behind her walk figures that make Stannis' face darken with recognition. Tyrion Lannister, no longer the dwarf who once served as Hand, but a scarred exile seeking vengeance. Varys, the spider who has finally chosen his side in the Game of Thrones. "Your Grace," Daenerys says, her voice carrying the authority of one who has conquered cities and freed slaves. "King Stannis Baratheon." "Pretender," Stannis replies coldly. "Daughter of the Mad King, you have no claim here." "I have 3 dragons and 50,000 swords," Daenerys counters. "My claim rests on the same foundation as your brothers did. Conquest." She gestures to the Iron Throne with one elegant hand. "But I did not come here merely to trade one king for another. I came to break the wheel that has crushed the people of this realm for centuries." Pretty words from a woman who burns cities. "I burn only those who stand in the way of justice," Daenerys replies. "Your justice punishes after the crime is committed, but mine prevents the crime from happening at all." The philosophical debate might have continued, but it is interrupted by the sound of wildfire caches exploding throughout the city. Melisandre, taking advantage of the distraction, has triggered the remaining stores of alchemical fire that honeycomb King's Landing's foundations. Green flames surge through the streets like liquid death, consuming Targaryen and Baratheon forces alike. The sound is like the roar of 1,000 dragons, and even the real dragons wheel away from the inferno in alarm. In the throne room, the explosion's shockwave shatters the great windows and sends everyone staggering. When the dust settles, both kings stand amid the ruins of their certainty, staring at a city transformed into a hellscape of green fire and black smoke. "What have you done?" Daenerys whispers, her eyes wide with horror as she sees the devastation wrought by Melisandre's final gambit. "What was necessary?" Melisandre replies, though even she seems shaken by the scope of destruction. The Lord of Light demands sacrifice. But the sacrifice has been too great. Outside the Red Keep, King's Landing burns with flames that will take days to extinguish. Thousands lie dead in the streets, their bodies consumed by wildfire or crushed under falling stone. The great Game of Thrones has been decided not by honor or justice, but by the terrible price of victory itself. As the green fires burn lower and the black smoke begins to clear, both Dragon Queen and Stag King stand among the ashes of their ambitions, realizing that some victories are indistinguishable from defeat. The Iron Throne remains, but the kingdom it was meant to rule lies broken around them. The realm will need new leaders now, not conquerors or judges, but healers who can bind up wounds that run deeper than any sword can reach. The smell of ash and char hangs over King's Landing like a funeral shroud. 3 days have passed since the wildfire consumed half the city, and still the smoke rises from the ruins, where once the street of steel rang with the sound of hammers on anvils. Now only the wind whistles through burned-out shells of buildings. The great sept of Baelor stands intact, but scarred, its marble walls stained with soot, and its crystal windows shattered. In the throne room of the Red Keep, an unlikely council has gathered around a simple wooden table. The Iron Throne looms behind them, untouched by the fire but somehow diminished by the devastation that surrounds it. Daenerys Targaryen sits across from Stannis Baratheon, both rulers stripped of the certainty that once drove them to war. Between them, Ned Stark serves as mediator, his weathered face bearing the weight of choices that saved thousands of lives, but could not prevent the greater catastrophe. The city needs food, medicine, shelter for those left homeless, Ned states plainly, consulting the reports that cover the table. Both your armies suffered heavy casualties, but the small folk paid the heaviest price. 30,000 dead, perhaps more. Daenerys stares out the broken windows toward the harbor, where her remaining ships bob at anchor. Of the 50,000 men she brought to Westeros, barely 20,000 remain effective. The dragons circle overhead, restless and wounded, their cries echoing across the water like the voices of the dead. I came to break chains, she says quietly. Instead, I helped forge them from ash and bone. Stannis, his armor dented and his crown askew, nods grimly. Justice without mercy is merely vengeance. I have learned this lesson at a cost I would not wish on any realm. The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of unexpected visitors. Tyrion Lannister enters the hall, but not as the exile-seeking vengeance he had been just days before. Behind him walks Tywin Lannister himself, the old lion finally come to treat with his daughter's killers. "Your Graces," Tywin says, with a bow that contains no mockery, only exhaustion. "I come to discuss terms." The sight of the man whose armies had besieged the city for months, whose gold had funded rebellion across the realm, standing humbled before the ruins of all their ambitions, brings home the true cost of the war they have fought. "Terms?" Stannis asks coldly. "You are a traitor and a rebel. The penalty is death, yes," Tywin interrupts. "As it was for my daughter, as it has been for 50,000 souls in this city alone. When does justice become simple slaughter, Your Grace? When does righteousness become madness?" The question hangs in the air like smoke from the dying fires. It is Ned Stark who breaks the silence, his voice heavy with the weight of leadership in the aftermath of catastrophe. "The realm is broken," he says. "The Iron Throne may survive, but what it rules over is ashes and memory. We can continue to seek vengeance for past wrongs, or we can try to build something from what remains." "What do you propose?" Daenerys asks. It is then that Tyrion steps forward, the dwarf whose brilliant mind has been sharpened by loss and exile. "A new compact," he suggests. "Not a kingdom ruled by one throne, but a confederation of realms united by common cause." He produces a map of Westeros, its borders redrawn by war and necessity. The North has bled for southern politics too long. Let it govern itself under House Stark. The Vale, the Riverlands, and what remains of the Stormlands form one kingdom, the Reach and Dawn another. The Westerlands, humbled but not destroyed, rebuild under new leadership. "And the Iron Throne?" Stannis asks. "Remains," Tyrion replies, "but as a symbol of unity rather than domination. A council of kings and queens who meet to address threats that affect all realms, invasions, famines, diseases that cross borders." The proposal is radical, unprecedented, almost unthinkable. But as they look out over the ruined capital, the impossibility of returning to the old ways becomes clear. The Game of Thrones has consumed itself, leaving only the ashes of ambition and the crying need for something different. "The North accepts," Ned says, after long consideration. "We have learned the cost of southern politics. Better to rule ourselves and live in peace with neighbors who respect our sovereignty." Daenerys considers the proposal with the calculating mind that conquered 3 slave cities. "And who rules this council of equals? Who sits the Iron Throne when it matters?" "No one," Tyrion answers. "And everyone. Or the throne becomes a symbol rather than a seat of power. Each realm sends representatives. Decisions are made by consensus, and no single crown rules over all others. It is a revolutionary concept, born from the ashes of absolute monarchy." As the hours pass and the negotiations continue, the outlines of a new world begin to emerge from the ruins of the old. The Targaryens will return to Dragonstone, ruling the Crownlands directly, but serving as protectors of the new confederation. The dragons will be used not for conquest, but for defense against external threats. Daenerys, her dreams of absolute rule, tempered by the reality of what such dreams cost, agrees to serve as guardian of the realm rather than its queen. Stannis, his rigid sense of justice finally balanced by mercy, learned too late. I will take the Stormlands and rebuild them according to law and order. But his laws will be tempered by the counsel of those who serve him, and his justice will be balanced by the recognition that even the righteous can go too far. The North will indeed achieve its independence, with Robb Stark ruling as king in the North under his father's guidance. The Riverlands will join them, bound by marriage alliances and mutual defense pacts that replace the old feudal obligations. The Reach, its armies decimated, but its wealth intact, will be ruled by a chastened House Tyrell under Margaery's regency. The Westerlands, stripped of their supremacy, but allowed to rebuild, will serve under new lords, chosen for competence rather than birth. Most revolutionary of all, the small folk will have a voice in this new order. Representatives from each major city and region will sit on councils that advise the ruling houses, and laws will be written to protect those who have no armies or gold to defend themselves. It will not be easy, Ned warns as they finalize the agreements. Old habits die hard, and there will be those who seek to return to the old ways. Let them try, Daenerys says, watching her dragons soar over the bay. Fire and blood built the old world. Perhaps wisdom and cooperation can build a better one. As autumn deepens toward winter, the new confederation begins to take shape. The Iron Throne remains in the Red Keep, but it sits empty except for ceremonial occasions. Real power flows through councils and negotiations, through compromise and consensus, rather than decree and domination. The cost has been enormous. At King's Landing bears scars that will take generations to heal. Entire noble lines have been extinguished, and the old certainties about bloodlines and divine right have been shattered beyond repair. Yet from this devastation, something unprecedented emerges, a realm governed by laws rather than whims, by consent rather than conquest. In Winterfell, Ned Stark sits beside a fire in his solar, reading reports from across the north. His children are safe, his people prosperous, and for the first time in years, no ravens carry news of war or political intrigue. The independence he once thought impossible has become reality, bought not through rebellion, but through the simple recognition that some bonds cannot be maintained by force alone. A raven arrives bearing the seal of Dragonstone. Daenerys writes of her efforts to heal the Crownlands, of dragons used to clear rubble rather than rain destruction, of former slaves learning to live as free men and women in a land that has never known such concepts. Another letter bears Tyrion's seal, reporting from the Westerlands, where he serves as Lord Paramount under the new system. The gold mines still produce wealth, but that wealth now serves broader purposes than one family's ambition. Schools are being built, roads repaired, and the small folk who once cowered before Lannister pride now participate in their own governance. Even from Storm's End, Stannis sends reports of progress, justice tempered by mercy, law balanced by compassion, order maintained through consent rather than fear. The man who once ground his teeth at every perceived slight now rules with a wisdom that his earlier rigidity could never have achieved. As Ned sets down the letters and looks out over the snowy fields of the north, he reflects on the chain of events that began with a single choice in a godswood. One moment of moral courage, one decision to seek truth rather than accept comfortable lies, has transformed the entire realm. Cersei Lannister died for her crimes, but her death rippled through history in ways no one could have foreseen. The War of Five Kings became something else entirely. Not a struggle for dominance, but a crucible that forged new ways of thinking about power and responsibility. The realm is smaller now, divided into independent kingdoms that must cooperate rather than compete. But it is also stronger, more just, more responsive to the needs of those who actually live and work within its borders. The Game of Thrones has ended not with victory or defeat, but with the recognition that the game itself was the problem. In its place stands something unprecedented, a confederation of equals, bound not by conquest, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. Outside Ned's window, snow begins to fall on the north, which is finally, truly free. The price of justice has been paid in full, and from that payment has emerged a world that, while scarred and changed, offers hope for something better than what came before. The wheel has been broken, not through fire and blood alone, but through the harder work of building something new from the pieces of what was destroyed. And in that building, the true victory has been won. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.